Good evening, folks. We'll be talking about observational learning this evening. And that's ask the question, can we learn new behaviors and skills without conditioning and reward? Can we just kind of watch other people do stuff and pick it up through observation? Well, yes. And one of the ways we do so is by observational learning, meaning it's watching what happens when other people do a behavior and then learning from the experience. We all do it all the time, I guarantee it. So the skills required: mirroring, which is being able to picture ourselves doing the same action, so it's kind of like putting yourself in the other's shoes, basically, and cognition, which is thinking, noticing consequences and associations, being able to make conclusions based on what you see. So there's a couple different processes that happen. The first one is called modeling, and this is the behavior of others serves as a model or an example of how to respond to a situation. We may try this model regardless of reinforcement. So usually we model people who have some position of authority: parents, teachers, older brothers and sisters, someone that we look up to and has some sort of authority. There's also what's called vicarious conditioning. Now the word vicarious means experience indirectly or through others. When I was younger and doing a lot of traveling and stuff, my mother would always say that she was, living vicariously through me, because I was doing a bunch of stuff and she was just kind of sitting around at her job. So that's vicarious, is when you experience something indirectly through another person. So vicarious reinforcement and punishment means our choices are affected as we see others get consequences for the behaviors. So if we see someone getting punished, we're less likely to follow that behavior. But if we see someone get rewarded, that kind of reinforces us to model that behavior. So that's vicarious conditioning and modeling. So the reason we know so much about this observational learning, scientifically at least, is through this famous experiment called the Bobo doll experiment. And we'll be watching this in class on Monday. So this is where kids saw adults punching an inflated doll while narrating their aggressive behaviors, such as kick him. These kids were then put in a toy-deprived situation and acted out the same behaviors that they had seen. So here's some images. There's the mom on the top and then the kids on the bottom. So yeah, they're beating up that clown doll pretty bad. So you can see there's almost a direct correlate. This lady's sitting on the doll, so this little girl. This lady's picking up the doll, and so you can see. So this demonstrated the principle of modeling and observational learning for the first time in the lab setting. And we'll look at the video of that on Monday, as I said. So how does mirroring work in the brain? As you can see here, different parts of the brain are activated when we experience pain and then when we experience empathy, which is the ability to sort of feel what someone else is feeling, to really identify with what they're feeling and going through. So when we watch others doing or feeling something, neurons fire in patterns that would fire if we were doing the same action or having the feeling ourselves. I think that's pretty amazing, actually, that the human brain has the capacity to really sort of take on the qualities of whatever environment we're in, whatever stimulus is being provided to our brain. So these neurons are referred to as mirror neurons, and they fire only to reflect the actions or feelings of others. So this is how this observational learning occurs, through these mirror neurons, which actually sort of take on the same behaviors that is being witnessed. I think that's pretty cool. So from mirroring, we move to imitation. You know what imitation is, when you actually act out what the other person is doing. So humans are prone to spontaneous imitation of both behaviors and emotions. So we say that emotions are contagious. There's the idea of emotional contagion. This includes over-imitating, that is, copying adult behaviors that have no function or rewards, such as, little character traits. Like, for example, I cough the way that my dad coughs, I've noticed. Just basic kind of subtle things. So research has also shown that children with autism are less likely to cognitively mirror and less likely to follow someone else's gaze as the neurotypical toddler's doing. So look, the mom's looking in that direction, the kid's looking in that direction. I've even noticed with my dog that if I my attention, sometimes actually, my attention's focused somewhere, he'll be looking in the same direction. Children with autism don't seem to have this ability, and this kind of gives you a picture as to what exactly autism is. It's kind of like the inability to empathize with others. So when we have mirroring plus what we call vicarious reinforcement, that is like seeing someone else get rewarded, or get reinforced, not just rewarded. So this mirroring enables observational learning. We know this. So we cognitively practice a behavior just by watching it, because our brain, actually, the neurons mirror that. So before we act it out, our brain is acting it out. If you combine this with vicarious reinforcement, that is watching someone else get reinforced in some way, we're even more likely to get imitation. So for example, monkey A saw monkey B getting a banana after pressing 4 symbols. Monkey A then pressed the same 4 symbols, even though the symbols were in different places. So this kind of shows us that if you see someone else getting a positive reinforcement, then we're more likely to imitate those behaviors because we kind of want those rewards ourselves. So this is what we call prosocial effects of observational learning, meaning it's beneficial to social lives. So prosocial behavior refers to actions which benefit others, contribute value to groups, and follow moral codes and social norms. Parents try to teach this behavior mainly through lectures. I'm sure you've gotten plenty of them, as have I. But it may be taught best through modeling, especially if kids can see the benefits of behavior to oneself or others. So this is kind of practice what you preach. Gandhi has that quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world." There's some definite truth to that. Because there's the opposite of that, which is do as I say and not as I do, which is just a cop-out for someone who's hypocritical and isn't actually living the way that they claim to want you to live. So modeling is very, very important in terms of child rearing, in terms of just, for me as a teacher, for any time that you are in a position of authority, it's a good idea to practice what you preach because it really works. So there's also antisocial effects of observational learning. So what happens when we learn from models who demonstrate antisocial behavior, that is, actions that are harmful to individuals in society? Well, the same thing that happens with prosocial behavior. Children who witness violence in their own homes but are not physically harmed themselves, they may hate violence, but they still may become more violent than the average child, simply because their brain is mirroring this. Perhaps this is a result of the Bobo doll effect. And under stress, we do what has been modeled for us. So even if we don't get hit or abused ourselves, if we see it, we probably are more likely to imitate that. So here we go. Media models of violence. This is kind of has been in the news for 20, 30 years. Is the violence in media affecting our behavior? So do we learn antisocial behavior such as violence from indirect observation of others in the media? It's up to you to find out. So research shows that viewing media violence leads to increased aggression and reduced prosocial behavior, such as helping an injured person. This violence viewing effect might be explained by imitation, but also by desensitization towards pain in others. So if soldiers often experience this, when you're involved and you're exposed to this violence so often, you really desensitize yourself, because if, in those situations, the soldiers, for example, if you're dwelling on every single moment of violence that you experience or witness, you probably will be dead because you're not in the zone. You're kind of, lost in your thought world. In the same way, I have to admit, I used to be obsessed with pro wrestling. So this could have been a picture of me and my brother. And I can say from my own personal experience that I definitely modeled behavior of these big bad wrestler dudes. So that's up to you to form your opinion. There's different sides on this debate. Some people think violence is really influencing the youth, not just the youth, but everybody, since we're so engulfed in media. And some people think that it's not that big of a deal, I'll leave it up to you. Alright folks, that concludes our unit. Get ready for the test. See you guys later.